All right, we're live. DeMeco Ryans. The real work continues. We are 80 days away from the NFL draft. Next 80 days are going to be really telling. Schedules laid out for DeMeco Ryans. You have 5 new coaches on the schedule, just 5 teams that made the playoffs last season, and 10 teams with uncertain quarterback situations. So the opportunity is there to make a jump in year one, assuming that you use your assets the right way. I want to touch on all of that. I want to get your comments in here. Go ahead and get the comments in. We already got 29, so we are rolling deep here. I'm going to bring in my boy Cody Stutes as well right now. Cody, how you living, my friend? Good to see you.
Living large, living good, man.
Large, huh?
I mean, I've been living large for a good portion of my life, so
How are you feeling about this DeMeco thing moving forward? I'm starting to get a little bit of anxiety because now we're starting to talk about the draft. Now we're starting to talk about, free agency, and not having full control of the draft is just really giving me a lot of anxiety. The Matt Miller draft scenario where the Colts trade up and get Bryce Young, and then the Texans take Will Levis. If that happens, I would rather just not take a quarterback, and maybe even consider trading back themselves, or taking either Carter or Anderson. I'm not a take a quarterback at number two just to take a quarterback at number two guy, especially when you got a coach who's going to be here for the long run, especially when you feel like I do about the quarterbacks. Now, if you feel different about the quarterbacks, then I can understand you wanting to take one. But I don't think we're to the point right now where the Texans are that desperate to where you have to try to force the issue. Um, I'm not there yet. I think there's a little bit of a process. I think there's a little bit of a rebuild, and I haven't really gotten to that point yet.
as far as the D'Amico situation, I mean, I'm thrilled. But when you factor in the draft, man, not having number one sure makes it difficult. Sure makes it a very unique situation. Matt Miller's mock draft, which had Bryce Young going one to the Indianapolis Colts and Will Levis going two to the Houston Texans, I called that my PBS scenario. And no, I'm not talking about public broadcasting systems. I'm talking about puke blood scenario. I would throw up blood if that was how it happened. I'm not interested in Will Levis whatsoever as a franchise quarterback. So many people are going to think that these guys that have issues in college with accuracy and decision making are going to turn into Josh
Josh
Allen.
Allen, he's the new Dirk Nowitzki. Like you know how everybody thought that because they found the Mavs were the one team who found this raw European revolutionary guy like Yi Jianlian and Jake
Darko.
Sucker, like yeah, like all these guys were like the next Dirk, and that's what's happening with Josh Allen now, where something crazy happens, and now all of a sudden it's almost like people think that you can teach accuracy. Well, he can figure it out. Mike Leach, pour one out for him. He said that's the most impossible thing to teach. You can't teach accuracy. And now it feels like even Richardson, I've heard him compared to Josh Allen. I pulled a clip the other day on the show, In the Loop 10 to 2 Sports Radio 610. Download the Odyssey app. We had Kubiak on today. We'll play you some of that. And also subscribe, this is one of the top source for daily Texans digital content. Also subscribe to Stutz. He compared Malik Willis to Josh Allen last year. Like we're just getting out of control now, where we think every quarterback who has unrealized potential is going to turn into Josh Allen. I think
I
it's
mean,
getting out of control.
as far as Levis goes, he's Kentucky Carson Wentz, and not the good Carson Wentz that almost won an MVP award before he got hurt for the season. He's Carson Wentz. Go watch the decision making. Go watch the plays. I mean, you watch Carson Wentz play football, and it's what in the Carson Wentz was that? Well, you'll be watching Will Levis play football in the NFL, and it'll be what in the Will Levis is that? As far as Matt Miller's mock draft, the price that the Colts paid in his hypothetical trade was the price that I would easily pay. The Colts paid $4.34, a fourth this year and a third next year. The Texans have a better first round pick than four. So I would think you could knock off that second rounder. And I mean, picking up a third and a fourth for moving back a spot. That's not a bad deal for the Bears. My thing is if leaving the first two picks, you have to leave with the quarterback. It has to be Bryce Young or CJ Stroud.
It has to. So you think there's not a drop off or what? Because I don't. Why does it have to?
Because they're both with because you find yourself in quarterback purgatory after that, and there's not a clear path to a opportunity at a franchise quarterback.
But I think you find yourself more to quarterback purgatory if you use a prime asset on a quarterback just to get a quarterback. I think that's more sometimes you can't get out of quarterback purgatory. I know that it's easy to say what, huh?
Well, you damn sure can't get out of quarterback purgatory if you don't draft one.
Yeah, but you don't. But there's like you don't just take like how much of a drop off do you think there is from Young to Stroud?
I believe Young is better. I believe Young is.
I don't think it's close.
You don't think it's close at all?
I don't think it's close. I don't think any of these guys are on Bryce Young's level.
I am to the point where I would be okay with Stroud if it's not Bryce Young. But I prefer Bryce Young. I would trade up to one. So, I mean, like Bryce Young has been my guy since it became apparent the Texans were going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. So I've wanted Bryce Young. Bryce Young's my guy. I'm not interested in anybody else. I just don't know who's playing quarterback if you don't take a quarterback with one of those first two picks.
Davis Mills or a veteran.
Yeah, does anybody want to sign up for another year of Davis Mills? He sucks.
No, you don't. But I mean,
what veteran's gonna come here?
I'd probably not. I mean, there aren't going to be too many people. I mean,
It's not Carr. It's not Garoppolo.
No, I mean, I said Davis Mills or a veteran. I mean, I don't know.
You want Baker Mayfield and Davis Mills battling it out in training camp? That's one way to lose a lot of momentum.
No, I don't. But I don't want to take a quarterback that I don't feel is supposed to be a 2. I mean, it's just kind of the consequence of the whole thing. And the problem with it is the Jets drafted Zach Wilson. They've done everything the right way, but I mean, even if they had taken Justin Fields, like, are they that much further ahead? He's better than Zach Wilson, but the point is, if Bryce Young is him and he goes, then you might just be out of luck.
I just don't know who's like. I just don't know. Like, you're just burning a whole year at quarterback if you don't have a rookie.
Goyo says people are overhyping Bryce Young too much. This year's draft ain't that good. I would just say give best available. I don't think he's overhyped at all. I don't think there's a draft in the last 5 years where Bryce Young isn't a first round pick. I think people are underhyping him, honestly. I think he's actually, despite the fact that I think he might end up being the first quarterback taken, I think he's getting as disrespected as I can remember someone get. Based on nothing other than some size.
When you factor
that you don't see at all when he plays.
When you factor in the last 4 drafts, he's my third favorite quarterback, behind Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow. I like him better than Kyler. I like him better than Tua. I like him better than Herbert, because you got to remember what Herbert was as a prospect coming out. Herbert was not amazing at Oregon. You know, Herbert turned into this with a little bit of luck, but I mean, that was not what Herbert was supposed to be right away. Like, you could see it turning into something maybe if he started to hit his potential and hit his peak. But Bryce is my third favorite quarterback prospect the last 4 drafts, behind 2 guys that went number 1 and were no question number 1s.
Lively says, give Jimmy G a 2-year contract. Let any QB learn under him. Who has Jimmy G ever mentored at a high level, actively mentored?
Why would perhaps the only notable free agent quarterback sign a 2-year deal? Like, Carr might get traded. Rodgers is a trade. Garoppolo is going to be wide and clear, the best free agent quarterback. He's not signing a 2-year deal. Like, you're not getting a bargain with any of these veterans who are good. Like, there's not a bargain. Like, Derek Carr makes $110 million over the next 3 years. Like, A, I'm not signing up for that. B, when he gets traded, he's getting a contract extension.
Travis Bushong says, I love random stream commenters promising me certain quarterbacks won't be good with all their expertise LMFAO. There's no promise, sir. And I love weirdos going in random streamers things. By the way, Landry Locker, Sports Radio 610, 10 to 2, Monday through Friday. Cody Stutes, ESPN 97.5. But I love random T logos coming through talking about random streamers. That's probably my thing. But there are no promises. Like, in all seriousness, there's no promise. I mean, it's just an opinion about quarterbacks. Everyone thought Josh Allen was going to suck, and he ended up being good. So yeah, there's no promise. So confident in the takes. He follows up. I mean, why wouldn't I be? I just don't. I don't know why I wouldn't be. But congrats on being so cool and going in random streamers takes. Travis, is it Bushong? Whatever it is. Congratulations to you, weirdo.
Is there? So it's Bryce or bust from a QB drafted standpoint for you?
For me, yeah.
Okay, so you wouldn't even take one in, say, the third, fourth round or anything like that?
I mean, everyone's talking about Hendon Hooker and stuff. I mean, I don't.
He's not playing in 2023. I don't know why people keep talking about Hendon Hooker.
Yeah, he's got he tore his ACL later than Kyler Murray did. Kyler Murray's not coming back till midseason. By the time he's ready to play, he's gonna be 26 or 27.
Hendon Hooker can't even practice like a real quarterback this year. Like, he's a non-factor in 2023. So people got to stop bringing up Hendon Hooker's name.
Yeah, he's one of the ones, but yeah, for me, it is definitely Bryce, for sure. That's my guy.
So you'd go what, Anderson and a wide receiver with 2 and 12?
I would go. I mean, I like the idea of taking Bijan at 12 if he's there. I don't know if that's going to happen. And then I like the wide receiver even if you have to trade up for a wide receiver at the end of the first with that second, I would be down with that. I do wonder what they're going to say about Smith and Jigba and what they're going to say about that. But the wide receiver value, like at the end of the first round, seems to be pretty crazy. I could see a massive.
It's so weird watching the mock drafts come down this year, because we saw 5 wide receivers go off the board in the top 12 picks last year, and there's most mocks have the first wide receiver coming off the board at 12. I just don't know that that's gonna be the case this year. Like, I have to imagine that wide receiver is going to be not as popular, but going to be one of the more popular positions, even with like a little bit of a decrease in overall talent.
Shout out to Travis, who watches twice a week. So yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, appreciate you. Cap and Trade says, hey, what's up, Weasel? But I wanted to get into the Shanahan influence. I'm just kidding, Cap. I wanted to get into the Shanahan impact because Gary Kubiak joined the show today. In the Loop, 10 to 2, Sports Radio 610, 10 to 2 Central. And he talked about the Shanahan impact. This is what he said. And I want to add to this, Stutes, because I actually think the biggest Shanahan impact is not the one that we talk about the most. But before that, here is Gary Kubiak talking about the Shanahan impact. All right, so every time we talk about this, and I think this is it's fair to think about the offensive impact when it comes to Shanahan, but I think the biggest impact, and I think the way in which DeMeco's brain seems to work with like learning experiences, I actually think the most valuable thing that he's going to learn from Kyle Shanahan is how to handle the situation that he's in right now. Because despite the fact that this has been, when you actually dive into it, it's been crazy circumstances. It's been circumstances that we've never seen for the most part. Like, if you really dive into it and talk about sexual allegations, quarterbacks wanting to go, a POS, personal service walking around, all that, like, you can say there's nothing like it. But I actually think it's really similar to the San Francisco situation at like almost an extreme level where you had Jim Harbaugh have all his success. It came tumbling down. The team got old. Ownership seemed in over its head. They were calling Jed York basically the San Francisco version of Tommy Boy. They hired after Harbaugh left, and much like after O'Brien left, although a much larger scale of success, they had two one and done coaches, Tom Sula, longtime position coach, who had no business being a head coach like David Culley. Then the retread, Chip Kelly. Texans hired Lovie Smith. And then San Francisco, despite all that turmoil and everything, was able to get the most sought after assistant on the market, Kyle Shanahan. He went to San Francisco. And I know we don't really remember this, but Shanahan only won 10 games his first 2 years combined. He won six games, and then he won four. And he's kind of built a program, and he was able to overcome a lot of the questions on a different level than what the Texans had dealt with. You had the quarterback situation. Also, you had that kind of falling apart with Kaepernick and whatever happened up there with the deteriorating play or whatever you want to say with Chip Kelly and so on and so forth. The point is the guy who led you to all those victories outside of the one with Alex Smith, he was there. So I think there's a lot of similarities, and I actually think that's the biggest lesson that DeMeco can learn. Besides the offense, I think the offense is a given, but I think that's like an exclusive type of thing that you can learn.
Yeah, I'm sure Shanahan had some, hey, build it this way, don't build it this way, like learn from any mistakes I made situations from DeMeco Ryans. So that's also a resource that DeMeco can probably jump on whenever he needs to jump on that. But yeah, San Francisco was in a bad spot in a bad way, and it took them a little bit of work to get there, a little bit of luck as well, and they end up with a situation where they drafted extremely well. Most of their starters are drafted players from the past few seasons, which is kind of different from, say, the Eagles, which is, they have guys that are drafted like 10 years ago that are key players for them, like most of San Francisco's guys in the past few seasons. And so Shanahan showed you, Kyle showed you the way. He showed you the way. You got to draft really well. You got to get a little bit lucky. You got to hire a bunch of really good people, because when you start getting successful, people are going to start picking them off. And it's a fun, not easy, but it's a fun route to try to replicate as well.
Correct. Can you hear this? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear this now.
Let's not forget where he's coming from, who he's been with the last.
So that's Kubiak. He was basically talking about Kyle Shanahan. Here you go.
If you work for Kyle, like I work for his dad, he makes you study both sides of the ball. He makes you, as a defensive coordinator, understand what I'm trying to do to you offensively on the practice field. So DeMeco's knowledge, we know what it is defensively, but his knowledge of offensive football and how Kyle tries to attack defenses, that has really grown for him as a football coach too.
Yeah, so I that's what I think of when I think of the real Shanahan impact.
I heard you say this on the radio, and I think this is a really good point. And what you laid out with where DeMeco came from and where he is now, and like where he was and what that organization had gone through and where he is now, like independent of the Texans, like being in the fabric of this organization as a former player, like he was an attractive candidate because of where he came from, how you can replicate some of what they did in San Francisco. Because, like, if you're trying to replicate the Kansas City Chiefs, good luck. There ain't a bunch of Patrick Mahomes running around.
Yeah.
Okay? You're trying to replicate the Philadelphia Eagles, good luck. They've spent 10 years building this thing. Like, if you want to replicate somebody, you replicate a situation like San Francisco where they made some really shrewd draft picks. They made a couple of really nice trades, and they found themselves, after a few years of serious investment in themselves and some good coaching, a juggernaut in this league. And they run through people that aren't ready for them. And they just really, really beat people up on both sides of the ball, and it's a fun watch. And it's not like they're not successful just because they have an incredible, amazing quarterback and a really good head coach. Like they're successful because they have a really good coach, and he's been able to coach up quarterbacks from here to way up here. And that's something that if you find the right people, you can replicate.
Yeah. And I also think that I don't think there's going to be like a model, like an identity for DeMeco Ryans. Like, I don't think there's going to be like, I think Shanahan has one model. And I think at times it's kind of, it's physically imposing. Like every team that played the 49ers that had a game the next week, they lost it. This year. It's the first time in NFL history that a team has lost it. But you also see a lot of guys getting banged up and stuff. I don't think DeMeco Ryans is going to be 100% married to that style. I think there is going to be a physical nature, but I think there's going to be a little bit more of a willingness to try new things. I think there's going to be like a willingness where it's not 100% run. It's not pass. I think, which I'm not saying that's a good thing. You'd love to duplicate what Shanahan does, but I don't think he's like going to be married to like a certain philosophy like Shanahan is. I think he's kind of a sponge of information.
DeMeco, like, he talked about accentuating guys' strengths, and it feels like they've had stuff rolling in San Francisco so well that the guys that they have brought in basically work for them. If DeMeco has a crew that plays, a variation of what he had in San Francisco or is better suited for a variation, it definitely feels like he's going to continue to do that, and he's going to continue to go down that road. Like if they end up with just an incredible, rushing attack and, maybe not impressive as a passing attack, they may be rush heavy, despite what he said, about being balanced and putting him in the hands of playmakers. Like it's really going to be one of those conversations where what team does he have? And look, we can talk about how good DeMeco is and how good coaches he hires are, how good Shanahan is. Ultimately, you got to get 53 bad dudes in that building and get them going and put them in a position to succeed. And that does feel like that's what DeMeco, with the staff that he's going to build, the way Caserio wants to build things with DeMeco, it feels like they're definitely going to be one of those like, hey, the players are going to dictate how we play, not forcing, round peg square hole like Lovie Smith having Derek Stingley guard a patch of grass all season.
We have the news from Aaron Wilson that the 49ers, their D-line coach, Chris K, he's going to remain with the franchise. Not the biggest deal to me. DeMeco's the defensive guy. He'll have no problem getting a defensive staff together. It's going to be the offensive guy is who you want. You want Bobby. And by the way, I have a video, John McClain, Bobby Slowick. McClain talked to Shanahan about him for like 30 minutes. That's what you want. I don't think you need to worry about that. I don't think that's really a surprise, kind of a natural. You just kind of move up and you're in good shape if you're him.
I think with the defensive coordinator, DeMeco basically told us that there were some guys that he was going to call the defense and they were the defensive coordinator, and there's some guys that they were going to call the defense. Like he didn't say that, but I'm not super worried about who the defensive coordinator of this team is when DeMeco Ryans is the head coach.
Yeah, I'm not concerned. The offensive coordinator is something that you're going to have to figure out. I actually asked Gary Kubiak about that. The offense, like what it's weird to ask Gary Kubiak, what mistakes did you make? Because it seemed like he did a pretty decent job more times than not of hiring offensive guys. Although there was mistakes here and there or staffing. But this is the one mistake that he said he made that he wouldn't want DeMeco to make.
Well, probably the biggest mistakes you make are when you get in too big of a hurry. You think, golly, you feel like you're behind already. Season's been over for a month and we need to get going. And you can make some mistakes if you get in too big a hurry. I always told Bob McNair when Bob gave me the job, everybody who does interviews wants to talk about, who's coming with you. How about your staff? And I remember telling Bob, the most important thing is whether or not I'm the right fit for your organization. We'll figure that other part out. We'll take our time. We'll get good coaches. And I think that's the way to approach it. Now, I'm sure DeMeco's got a lot of people tugging on him right now, but right now it's time to just settle into your routine, know what you want, talk to a lot of people. There's a lot of people out there. and just make sure you find people with the same vision you have. So DeMeco's always been very patient and in his life and what he wants to do, and I'm sure he'll approach this the same way.
Yeah, he says there's no hurry. The thing for me is I'm pretty sure there's been proactive thought put into this, So I'm sure he has options. I don't think it's, it's not like a we got to get to work type of thing on the staff. Maybe the draft, because you get in the room with the scouts and stuff like that. But as far as like he could probably have told you for the most part, like what he thought his staff was going to look like after interview 2.
I mean,
I'm sure that came up.
The lack of interviews tells you that you don't need to rush if you're getting your number one choice. Like, I mean, they've talked to 3 guys for the offensive coordinator job. One of them's not an option because he made a lateral move across country. And so the lack of interviews tells you that, who cares how fast it happens if you get your number one choice? If DeMeco wants Bobby Slowick and that's his number one choice, who cares when he hires him? And I don't care if it takes 2 months or 2 weeks.
Maverick Best Op says, I don't like this model. The Texans, after another team train that people are on, we tried to model the Patriots and we failed. We shouldn't try to model the 49ers. Let's make our own identity. I would say the only difference is that the 49ers, it's not based on one person. And I think the Patriots offense, you can make a case it's based on one person.
I think it's based on 2 people in New England.
Yeah, it's based on 2 people, but I'm looking even more so offensively.
Yeah, it's based around the quarterback being the greatest quarterback of all time.
Yeah. So I like if you do follow that San Francisco scheme, first of all, the San Francisco scheme, there's multiple examples of it working. I mean, good Lord. Los Angeles. You can go all over the place. That system's working everywhere. Minnesota. Miami worked this year, had Tua looking like an MVP candidate. So there's multiple examples of it. So I don't think it's quite the same of the Patriot way. And I also think the Patriot way has a lot of nostalgia BS that just quite frankly doesn't mean anything. So I wouldn't be too concerned, but I don't think that he's gonna be too married to it. KC007 with Young or CJ, we are not going to the Super Bowl this year. Until the D-line and O-line is fixed, gentlemen, you are caught up on the smoke screen, and it never plays out the way people think. Damn, Carr. I don't think the offensive line's as far off as people think it is. I actually think the offensive line's a quick fix.
The offensive line's one veteran center away. I think that would solve almost every offensive line problem.
Next question.
Kenyon's got to get better, but, you would expect that's going to happen with his first real season being a professional.
What do you think of Brandin Cooks? Would you trade or keep Brandin Cooks?
I would trade him. He can't be trusted. He lied. He turned his back on the organization. He turned his back on his teammates. He pouted. And you can't rock with that guy. And he changed. He can't be motivated by money, So I know people have compared this conversation about Brandin Cooks to the same one about Laramie Tunsil. Well, Laramie Tunsil bought back in, yeah, but Laramie Tunsil's motivated by money. Brandin Cooks is clearly not motivated by money. He got his money and then lied. He was in and then he wasn't in after he got his money. So it feels like Brandin Cooks did everything he could to sign the big deal and then wanted his way and didn't get his way. So see you later, Brandin Cooks.
Players in the locker room respect him. I mean, talk to multiple guys that still have respect for him. I just think he's too weird to really have around because it's not like he had an issue with the coach or he didn't say he had an issue with the coach. He literally just wanted to be traded the day after Jack Easterby got let go. And that to me is just kind of weird. And I don't think he's a good enough player to put up with that level of weird. Especially around these guys. So I don't know what the value is. I do believe that there's going to be someone at this point who might be willing to pay a little bit more. Who knows, how hard that contract is to move. But maybe he goes and, with his old buddy Deshaun, or maybe he goes back to Los Angeles, or maybe he ends up with the Cowboys. There's a lot of teams that need receivers, and he might fit in well there. But in this situation, I don't think his value is high enough, and I don't think that Brandin Cooks. If it would have been just as simple as, he didn't like the coach, then maybe we could talk about it. I just don't know about that.
If Cooks was a free agent, he'd be the number one wide receiver in free agency. So there's going to be a team that doesn't want to spend free agent money and make that type of commitment and have a bunch of stuff tied to a free agent that would be willing to do something with you from maybe it's around a third round pick or a fourth round pick standpoint. So I do believe somebody will be after Brandin Cooks, because when you think about movable assets or movable wide receivers, the contract is smaller than what DeAndre Hopkins is going to demand when he gets moved. He's better than every free agent wide receiver, in my opinion. And so by virtue of all of that, he's a pretty attractive option in a move. And yeah, I know Amari Cooper got moved for a 5th-round pick last offseason, but that felt like an anomaly, and people actually understand, I believe, the true value of having a guy that has had number one wide receiver experience on your team. And the price is not going to be certainly a 5th-round pick, I would think. There does become a point where it's probably more prudent to keep him than to trade him for next to nothing. So, but I believe you're going to find a 4th or a 3rd for Brandin Cooks. I really do.
Damn. And you probably could have found that at the deadline, and you would have the number 1 pick. We wouldn't be having all this Bryce Young freaking talk.
That's true.
So that's where we're at. Free agency. You mentioned free agency. What do you think the approach is going to be? Heavy spenders? Any position you would like to overpay for? Any priorities on the current team that you think they need to get done?
Contrary to some random website saying Jonathan Owens is a must bring back for the Texans.
Who said that?
I saw the conversation making its way around social media. I'm not in love with any of these edge rushers. And from a free agency standpoint, but my goodness, there's a handful of defensive tackles that are extremely intriguing from a various level of commitment standpoint. Daron Payne took his play to an entirely new level this year and was an absolute animal. Now, he's probably going to be the most expensive defensive tackle in free agency, but pass rusher with 10-plus sacks from the defensive tackle spot or in his mid-20s, I mean, it's pretty intriguing. And I'll be interested to see what linebackers are brought in, because I don't know that there's a ton of immediate trust guys for DeMeco at linebacker. So maybe there's a linebacker conversation as well. I suppose a veteran safety next to Jalen Petrie, but it feels like safeties kind of make too much money sometimes. So, and then a center, free agent center.
Safety market's really weird.
Safety market's so strange.
Remember the Landon Collins year where all these safeties were making bread, and then the next year I think it was nobody wanted to pay a safety. Like, it's like a seesaw.
Yeah. So if you told me like, hey, what positions are you for sure signing? Like, I'd for sure sign a defensive tackle. I'd for sure sign a linebacker. I'd look at safety, and I'd for sure sign one of the 2 free agent centers that are worth a hoot, which is Garrett Bradbury from the Vikings or the Browns center Ethan Posick.
Patrick Storm talking about LOL still mad at Cooks. A lot of people are. I just think it's weird. The whole thing was just weird. Like, really weird.
I'd also think about a veteran running back too.
Well, I think you need there's gonna be an array of backs. The whole running back room, I think, is gonna improve. Leonard saying overpay O-line. I know a lot of Texans fans kind of went away for a while, and I can't really. I can understand why you wouldn't want to fully invest in a Sunday, especially if it's just not what you want to do. But I feel like there's like a condition to like say the O-line sucks when it really doesn't suck that bad. it's actually pretty decent.
They
You got really good tackles. You got a rookie guard who should be better this year, you would hope. AJ Cann really wasn't that terrible. You believed in Justin Britt for whatever reason. He let you down, and then you had to play a backup center that had limited experience in that type of role. And he basically gave you what a backup center with limited experience in that type of role was going to give you. And that can throw off your entire offensive line. But the offensive line isn't just awful. Like, it's not bad. They had some bad games, they had some bad showings, but it's not that bad of an offensive line.
No, I believe it's an average offensive line on most days, and I believe it could be well above average with the correct center in there. So I really do believe getting a much better center would solve. It would make AJ Cann better. It would make Kenyon Green better, and just go out there and get a better center. Maybe it's I don't know if there's a rookie that you would want to put there, but again, I think there's two free agent centers that are worth investment, and I would get one of those two guys.
What about two guys that there's going to be talk of an extension for one, and then there's going to be talk of, do you bring this guy back? And I know that it was a 2-year deal, but Christian Kirksey and Titus Howard. I'll say I would not give Titus Howard an extension at this point. I don't understand the point. I think the fact they picked up the 5th-year option was a good test in faith. I'm not giving Titus Howard at this point some sort of massive extension. If he goes out there and earns it, cool. But I'd give Tunsil his extension, 3 years or whatever he wants. Titus is going to have to go out there and play on a contract year, and then we'll figure something out. Maybe even like an in-season type of extension or something. But I'm not extending both tackles at this point. Titus has had one really, really solid year as a tackle, and that's it.
Yeah,
so I'm not paying both of them right now.
I mean, I'm sure Titus would like a contract extension. Well, if he would like a contract extension, then Titus can give the team a deal. But I don't anticipate that to be the case. I'm sure he's going to want to cash in there. Tunsil has got to get a contract extension done just so you can lower the cap number and have a little bit more money to move around and spin around and play with, I would think. Plus, I mean, he didn't make an all-pro team this year, and that maybe doesn't affect his idea of how well he played, but you could certainly use it against him a little bit in negotiation. You only cost yourself money if you wait on Laramie. Like, it just becomes far more expensive, and he tries to dig in and dip into your wallet a little bit more. So I'd go ahead and do the deal now, and get him extended. And then with Titus, maybe in season, like you talked about, if he wants to put a deal on the table like that is, super team friendly, go for it. But I don't feel like there's any necessity to do an extension with him. And then Kirksey,
I wonder what DeMeco thinks of him. I don't think DeMeco's going to like him as much as Lovey did. I'm
fine. I mean, I would think that with DeMeco puts on the tape, he's not going to like what he sees from Christian Kirksey.
Yeah, I would think so too. I mean, God bless him. He gave it everything he had. I'm not trying to hate on him, and I'm not trying to attaboy him. And I'm not questioning how much of a leader he was last year and like being able to being willing to be the face of this thing. But let's be honest. You're a bad football team if Christian Kirksey's like one of the faces and one of the leaders of your squad. I do wonder what DeMeco is going to think about him in the evaluation.
I would think it's going to be a pretty ugly evaluation.
Yeah. Alfredo asks about Mike Gesicki. The tight end market's going to be interesting. I do think that they're going to sign one. I know some people are saying bring back Akins. Maybe he did have a good year. I don't know how he fits into this thing, but Gesicki, to me, I don't know if this fits in with what the Texans are going to do, but I could see him easily being like this year's Evan Ingram, a guy who just kind of gets lost in an offense for whatever reason. I mean, they didn't even use Cedric Wilson in the slot. They didn't even have enough balls for him there. But I could see him basically just going somewhere, being used as just a receiver and having like a career type year, maybe on like a 1-year deal. What did Ingram get? 1 year, $9 million or something like that? I could
Yeah.
see Gesicki figuring something like someone giving him like a 1 year, $8-9 million deal. I don't know if that necessarily works here. I don't know how they would look at that, but they're definitely going to have to do something at tight end.
I mean,
Quiteriano right now. I think Quiteriano is one of those guys that's going to come back at minicamp and just look jacked. He seems like that guy, but he showed some things, and then they're going to have to figure that out. I don't think OJ Howard's back.
me.
Akins maybe, or maybe you can find an Akins. I don't know.
A lot of tight ends in this draft.
They're going to have to block. They're going to have to block.
That's the thing is, if you look at San Francisco, they had George Kittle and a bunch of guys that could block. Like Kittle's one of the more physical guys, could little do it all action. Obviously not easy to find George Kittle's. And then Gesicki in Miami, they got Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Why would I throw the ball to Gesicki unless it's just, it's wide ass open? So it's like Gesicki doesn't block at all. I mean, he's a glorified wide receiver. So that doesn't really fit what we would think if they're going to kind of take that San Fran approach. Now, if they're a little bit more open-minded, maybe you have a conversation about Gesicki. I'd be interested to see which of these potential rookie tight ends would kind of fit the mold of what they'd like, where you have sort of, you have Akins as the old guy, Quiteriano's the second-year guy, and then there's the rookie tight end, and then everybody just kind of does the job together. And they approach it that way, but some of these, the Notre Dame kid Mayer, he could be a first rounder.
He could be a guy that slides in on day 2 and is on that Mel Kiper best available.
I tell you what, it's a hard evaluation. That Georgia tight end, Darnell Washington, they call him Big O because he wore 0. That's a guy that could maul people in the blocking game. I just don't know if he's a consistent enough wide receiver to spend a first or a second round pick on him. I don't know. Matt Miller had him going in the first round.
He's 6'7", 269.
Yeah, but okay, you go look at his receiving stats. You're like, well, Cody, they didn't throw the ball to him. It's like, yeah, well, they have the best receiving tight end in college football on their team, and they just don't throw the ball a bunch in general. And he's basically another offensive lineman.
And Cade's nice too, though, out of Utah.
He's got a back injury, which is certainly not an end-all be-all. Like
Gronk.
Gronk had a back injury, barely played at Arizona, and the Patriots were like, "Yeah, you're a monster."
Yeah.
But he's probably. It's hard to come in and be good at tight end right away. It's one of the hardest transitions of any of the positions. So it's hard to come in right away and be really good at tight end. Kincaid can help you in the passing game a lot right away. I just don't know about all the other stuff.
It's a deep. I see them probably with one of their thirds at the latest taking a tight end. And that was, the best draft that they had in New England. And I think the most pivotal was when they got Gronk and they got Aaron Hernandez. I think it kind of revived the Tom Brady career. I don't know what, if they don't do that, I don't know if Tom Brady ends up playing as long as he did.
That was the year
at the level he did.
The year Gronk went nuts with Hernandez on the team was Bill O'Brien's year as offensive coordinator.
Boy, they're talking about him like a damn savior out there. Bill O'Brien right now.
Have fun with that when it's not Tom Brady, Gronk, Welker and company.
Randy Moss.
Yeah, Randy Moss.
Yeah. So the number 2 trade up, we go to the draft 80 days from now. What's the price you would pay for the number 2 trade up?
I'd send them 33.
Really?
Yeah.
God. I love the second round. It is the price.
I know you. Well, I would tell you this.
They also kind of they want to make up for the Claypool trade.
But with the 12th overall pick, if you're moving up, you're obviously moving up for a quarterback. You take Bryce Young. Okay, let's just say they move up to 1 and they traded 33 to do that. You have an additional first. So I understand you're giving up a second, but you have an additional first, and 12 is that range where if Levis and Richardson are still there, somebody's coming up for them. So you could recoup some of the assets if you trade back from 12. If there's not a guy that you absolutely love at 12, you could recoup some of the assets. But yeah, I'm willing to trade 33. And I don't care. I don't care about, oh, well, they wouldn't have had to trade up if they
no, at
just
this
lost
point,
that game.
if yeah,
That's
don't
the
let your
past.
pride get in the way. Don't let
I'm-
your pride get in the way if you want to do it.
I'm worried about the future of the Houston Texans. Like, I can't go back and go lose that game if I'm the Texans. I have to do what's best for the Texans in 2023. So if it
frustrating
takes,
though.
like, I know you despise this part of the conversation, but I'm going to bring it up, and it's not the Jimmy Johnson board. You know, people, but it's draft value.
Chart.
If you look at some charts, the number 4 pick, which the Colts trading up to 1, that's the conversation. The number 4 pick is about 55% as valuable as the number 2 pick. Like, that's how different 2 to 4 is. Like, it's a big value drop to go from 1 to 4. It's not that big of a value drop to go from 1 to 2. So 2 being in this conversation it makes it so much easier to handle. And again, having 12, it allows you to stomach 33 going in that trade a little bit easier.
Well, the other thing is, from the Bears' perspective, and I think part of the reason they might be more open to a trade is they traded 32 for Chase Claypool.
Yeah, so they still have
they get 33 back. They can just say charge it to the game. We'll see what happens with Chase next year, but no harm, no foul.
They still have a second-round pick. They have the Ravens' second-round pick.
Roquan, yes.
But you're right. When they traded for Claypool, they didn't give up the Ravens' pick. They gave up their pick, which was stupid. Yeah. And so, that's a extremely valuable. Like 32, yeah, it's super valuable. 33 is almost just as valuable. Like, and if you were the Bears, and say you drafted, okay, you do the trade with the Texans, and you've got 33, and you got that other second-round pick. If you're the Bears and you feel like you have to come up for a player in the first round, it's very easy to go from 33 with that other second-round pick into the middle of the first round. And then they end up with 2 first-round players. And so it's like, oh, okay, like they ended up with one of the best defensive linemen and a slot receiver for Justin Fields. Like, that's a pretty good draft.
What's going to happen with the Bears and where the Texans are almost going to get, like, bushwhacked is if Eberflus falls in love with one of these guys and he thinks there's a chance that he won't be there at 4, then they're going to be trying really hard to trade with the Texans.
Yeah.
And that's how I think Caserio and them in this game of chess would be able to tell and kind of read between the lines, because if it is Carter or if it is Anderson that they fall in love with, assuming that they do, then they might not want to risk trading with Indy, and that's where they're really desperately trying to get a deal done with the Texans.
There's I would almost threaten it if I was Nick Caserio. Like, I'd call the Bears and I'd say, if somebody's coming up to 1, call us, let us try to beat it. And if you're on the phone with the Bears, you say, listen, if you're going to 4, your top 2 defenders will not be there because I'm taking one of them. And then the Cardinals are taking the other one.
Yeah, if we don't get our guy, if we don't get our quarterback, then we're going defense. And I don't even think it would be the worst strategy. And then you got to also think about it. And this is just how much I've kind of started to trust the process a little. I mean, then maybe you want to trade. Then maybe someone loves CJ Stroud and you want to trade back to 7, 8, 9, wherever. Do you think Green Bay, let's say Green Bay trades Aaron Rodgers and they get the Raiders' first-round pick, do you think they're just going to roll with Jordan Love, or do you think they try to get in the quarterback business too?
And they're going to roll with Jordan Love.
And that's cool. Michael asks, is Brevin Jordan a goner?
Play your way onto the roster if you want to stay.
Yeah, it's basically the same conversation as last year without the assurance of being on the roster no matter what. Same questions. Dropping the ball, staying healthy, blocking, all that type of stuff. he could easily get cut, though. It's not going to be one of those where he's probably going to be around no matter what. The QB class next year, how much does that play in things? For me, maybe a little bit, not a ton, maybe a little bit.
No, zero. You're not getting one of the top 2 guys next year. You're not getting Caleb Williams or Drake May next year. You had an incompetent head coach, one of the worst defenses in football, one of the worst offenses in football, and guys get hurt, and a small investment from a free agency standpoint in the team, and it's like you couldn't even get the number 1 pick then. So, like, you're going to spend a bunch of money in free agency. You're going to make 2 first-round picks. You've got a competent coach, and it's like, and you may have you're going to have better quarterback play. Like, you're not getting one of the top 2 picks next year.
Yeah, but you have 2-1, so maybe people just think that you have the ammo.
Yeah, but if someone needs a quarterback at 1 or 2, why are they trading out of it? Like, the only time that's ever happened where they've traded out of 1 and 2, those teams felt like they had a quarterback already. Like, if teams need QBs, and typically if you're one of the worst teams in the league, you need a QB, they're not trading you even for 2 first-round picks.
One Mike Street 1 says Young's release as a short QB is a problem with his ball trajectory when someone is in his face. Stroud has issues when he is pressured. Both are flawed, but Stroud has the better upside. I don't like. You're gonna have to show me when his release has been a problem, because I've probably watched 90% of the games that he's played. I haven't seen. I see passes batted at the line of scrimmage a lot. I haven't even heard anyone say anything about his release. You're the first one that I've heard, Mike. So I haven't heard that.
That quick release with precision decision making and incredible accuracy that Mel Kiper basically had to get a new keyboard when he was writing his profile of Bryce Young, that release.
Well, I mean, Dane Brugler's talked about his arm talent. Like, I haven't heard anything about his release being a problem.
Like, he can make every throw. I don't know what what are people worried about?
Size.
Yeah.
And now we're getting to where we're hyping up the draft where it's like, oh, he's going to stand on the scale. Will he weigh 210 or not?
Guess who was hurt more than Bryce Young this year? Mr. Prototype, Will Levis, was hurt all year.
Yeah, there's a lot of fake Bryce Young takes. And the comparison I keep hearing is Tua. Well, let's look at this a little bit. First of all,
Tua's hip popped out like he's a 90-year-old lady that needed a life alert.
Yes, Tua was injury prone in college. Like, Bryce Young missed 2 games because he fell on his shoulder. It's the same thing that happened to Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers is not little. Joe Burrow tore his ACL. Like, there's all this like, I think, made up Bryce Young stuff. And I get that maybe the size is going to be a problem in the NFL, but there's been nothing that's been a problem in college. And I think Spears said it the other day, like, it's not like he was just at a normal Alabama situation around him.
He played for one of the least talented Alabama offensive lines in recent memory.
Yeah, there's a lot of faith. And I would love, I don't know what's going to happen with the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts, I talked to Kevin Bowen today. He said the longer it goes, he thinks it's going to be Steichen if it goes the longest. So he could see it being Steichen. I do wonder if it is Steichen, if it is Shane Steichen and Shane Steichen goes out there, what quarterback he likes, because some people believe that Ballard would like traits, like he likes a lot of traits, which would make you think, maybe he goes up there and gets Will Levis, or someone that's not Bryce Young, really. But I don't know who Steichen likes. I know some people would say, well, he had all this success with Alabama quarterback Jalen Hurts /OU. Him and Bryce don't even play alike. Like, Jalen Hurts, they used him as a running back when he got benched. Like, Jalen Hurts is like a freak athlete that if he weren't an NFL quarterback, you could probably have him on your team doing something else. Like, he's that talented of an athlete, that much of a freak. Bryce Young is a true pocket passing quarterback that can move around, that looks to throw
with dynamic mobility, not running ability, but dynamic mobility. Like, knows when to break a pocket, knows when to step up in a pocket, knows how much movement he needs to make to get himself a throwing lane.
He's going to be one of the most like scrutinized guys, and there's a lot of people who started watching him like the last few weeks of the season when he was kind of playing through some pain. But Bryce Young, I just don't. I just think it's over analyzed. I think it's people are going to try to talk themselves out of Bryce Young, but he is him to me in this draft.
Yep.
And there's no guarantees. He might not. I mean, he might not end up being, but he is him to me.
I go. I'm telling folks, go watch.
Here's some more. Here's the more fake takes. Young can't handle pressure from the middle coming straight at him.
Wrong.
We need our O-line strong. Okay. Like who can? Like who can? Like pressure right up the middle straight to him. Like yeah, if there's pressure going right up the middle, who's handling that? Like I just don't like I just don't understand all this stuff.
It's also like that's just also not true. Like the guy has been able to roll out or to maneuver within the pocket or to make a quick decision. Like it's just not true.
You see CJ Stroud, someone just brought this up. I want to give him credit. B Yin Yang. They're both working out with a different quarterback coach and not working out with old Q.
Oh, Stroud got rid of Quincy Avery?
Him and Bryce are working out with the quarterback. I think he worked out with damn, dude, let me check this out.
Is it Jordan Palmer?
I think Jordan Palmer's working with Will Levis.
Oh.
Let's see. Yeah, they're working out with Adam Dedeaux, Dedeaux, founder of 3DQB. That's where Bryce Young and CJ Stroud are at working out right now. He's worked out with Tom Brady, Lamar Jackson, Matt Stafford, Justin Herbert, Drew Brees, and Justin Fields.
Well, that's one hell of a crew. Jeez. Run that list by me again.
He's worked out with Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Lamar Jackson, Matthew Stafford, Justin Herbert, and Justin Fields.
Golly.
So there you go.
This is the
some of these guys work out with this
is the crew. Oh, okay, hold on. We may have a fun connection here. Give me just a second. Let me see if I can get all this together here. See if I can place this all together. Part of this crew that you just talked about is John Beck, the former BYU quarterback.
Remember him?
Guess who coached Beck in Washington? Kyle Shanahan.
Okay.
Little connect the dots here. Yeah, Shanahan coached Beck in Washington when he was with the Washington R-Words.
Ooh. Okay. Well, I'm just not as big on CJ as a lot of people. I think I don't want to call people out. I do feel like a lot of people just watch the Georgia game and that's their impression of CJ.
I'm so concerned about him because he showcased his ability to move once, and that was against Georgia.
Yeah, and it was against Georgia. He didn't do it against Michigan. He didn't do it any other time. And there was a lot of sleepwalking there. Can't sleepwalk. Bryce Young never had the luxury to sleepwalk.
Also, I would tell you this. The amount of times that CJ Stroud rolled in there and just had no questions asked, 11 versus 11, 11 positives in the Ohio State category.
I mean, Bryce did go to Bama, though.
Sure, but Bryce went to Bama, and this is one of the currently one of the least talented Bama teams from recent memory. These guys may end up as NFLers, but they're not going to – like CJ's going to have 2 first-round offensive tackles maybe. Like Marvin Harrison's the best wide receiver in college football. They had like 15 running backs. And then it's the Big Ten. Like he walked in with a significant advantage every single game. Like at least there were days where Bryce walked in and the advantage was, 6-5 or 7-4, yeah, Bryce had some advantages. Sure. Like the guys at Bama are really good. Like I'm not sitting here telling you they're not, but like they're not as good as some of these other Bama teams.
No, I agree. Bryce all day. We got 80 days to talk about this though. Fun times, man. Fun times. Appreciate you. I'll holler at you. Follow Cody Stoots' channel. And keep it running. Seems like a lot of content going around with the Texans now, which is great, which is beautiful. Spread the love. Check it all out. But don't forget to subscribe to Stoots' and subscribe to the Locker Room and like the video. The video and listen to In the Loop on Sports Radio 610 and fire up the Odyssey app. Got McClain coming in tomorrow. And we'll get more into this Shanahan stuff, and we'll have some exciting stuff going on for the remainder of the week, and really for the remainder of the season. It's a fun time. Appreciate you, Stoots.
Absolutely, anytime, man.
All right, Cody Stoots, right there. Subscribe, like, #1 source for Texans digital content. Going to be fun. Draft, free agency, all that. We got a hell of a lot of time. I'm going to talk about the veteran QB options tomorrow. Be on the lookout for that video. Going to keep the content coming as well. If any breaking news pops, we got you covered on Sports Radio 610 here on Inside the Locker Room on YouTube. Subscribe, like, enjoy the ride. Whether it's bumpy like it's been the last 2 years, or it's kind of smooth as we are right now. No matter what happens, though, just remember when it comes to this Texan stuff, we are all in this together. Have a good night, folks.